The Škoda 52T. Today I'm at Lechovic, a neighborhood in Prague to the east of the center. I'm going to be riding on line 12 from the terminus here all the way to the other terminus at Sídliště Barandov. Although it's worth mentioning that Lechovic is not typically the terminus of line 12, but we're not here for line 12 specifically. We're here for the tram that's running on line 12, the 52T.
Formerly, the tram is called the Škoda ForCity Plus 52T as part of the Škoda Group's ForCity Plus family of trams. But for the sake of simplicity, we'll just be referring to this tram as the 52T. In December of 2023, Prague's public transport company, DPP, assigned Škoda for a new fleet of trams. The main reason for new vehicles is the ever-growing tram network in the city. The first tram was completed and put into testing at Škoda's facility in Pilsen back in January of 2025. In April, as part of the certification process, one of the vehicles was sent to Prague for testing on Prague's tram network, first without passengers and in June with passengers. In September, the 52T finished the certification process, and on November 3rd, the 52T began to formally operate on the DPP network, first running only on line 12, the line used during the passenger test runs. By the end of 2025, DPP will have 20 52Ts under its roster, with another 20 at the end of 2026. If the transport agency is satisfied with these vehicles, there could be a total of 252 Ts within a matter of years.
So let's actually make our way to the platform so we can board this tram. So, quick disclaimer, it's worth mentioning that I have actually ridden this tram a few times now, even going back to when it first began test runs for passenger service. So I would like to share with you my experiences with this tram in a second, because there's another tram that I want to mention first before we continue talking about this tram.
In this shot, you see the 52T next to what appears to be a similar looking tram. For those not very familiar with Prague's trams, the other tram is the 15T. This was also made by Škoda with the formal name of the Prague ForCity Alpha. These were the last new fleet of trams introduced in Prague, being the first 100% low-floor trams for the city. The last tram was delivered in 2018. And before someone makes a comment, yes, there have been low-floor T3s introduced after the last 15T was delivered. But these don't count because 1, they are T3 rebuilds, so they aren't entirely new vehicles, and 2, they have been produced since 2006. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing up the 15T is because while the two tram models have been manufactured by the same company, the 52T is drastically different in both how it operates and the passenger experience compared to its older relative. It feels weird saying the 15T is old when the oldest one is no more than 16. So I want to showcase some of the differences between the two trams, with some aspects being comparative to other Prague trams. Just from appearances, you can tell that the 52T is made up of 5 segments, while the 15T is only made of 3. That's in part to do with bogie placement or where the wheels sit. The 15T has 2 bogies at each end of the vehicle, with another 2 splitting up the 3 body segments. While the 52T also has 2 bogies at each end, it has 2 other bogies fixed directly onto the bodies of the tram. This leaves one of the bodies empty underneath while being supported by the rest of the vehicle. I'm not going to get into much more detail with the technical elements. You can learn more by checking out the 52T video made by Škoda, as well as a link provided to Škoda's website on the vehicle down in the description. I'd also recommend watching Tramly's video covering the 15T, a very informative video. I do want to talk about the passenger features and overall comfort based on personal experience, but I will at least leave it up to you to decide on whether the 15T or 52T looks more aesthetically pleasing. Probably the first thing one will notice are the stop display boards. The tram has them centered in the vehicle rather than by the windows like the other trams. Older vehicles do have a dot matrix display in the center, but this only tells you the next stop and destination. This new display position is a vast improvement, as it's easier to spot the following stops without having to twist your neck or jog down the vehicle. And speaking of displays, we need to talk about one that is on the outside of the tram.
Small detail, but very big deal, I think. You see that number 12 there? That is the line number. And the reason why it's a big deal is because most trams don't have the line number on the left side of the tram where you don't enter the vehicle, which, you know, when you're in a rush, you're not sure if that's your tram or not. So given that little thing, it's very helpful. But now I just, of course, missed my tram. So we're gonna cheat. We're gonna take the metro from here at Palmovka to Malostranska to catch up with that tram.
In the meantime, while I play catch up, let's look at some more details inside the tram. How can I talk about what's inside the tram while I'm not on it at the moment? It's called cinema magic, baby. Okay, I'm not gonna use baby, that's just weird. For those with strollers or prams, as well as a mobility device, there are 2 spots at the front of the tram and 2 in the back, which are not only marked on board the tram, but also very well marked by the doors outside the vehicle. So, a sense of wayfinding for those that need it. While the 15T has 2 designated areas, which can somewhat handle 2 devices at each spot, the 52T guarantees that each of the 4 spots can fit at least 1 device. Though, it's worth noting that only the first door of the tram has a ramp that comes out to those that need it. Interestingly, Prague's transit stops aren't leveled with the floor or steps of vehicles. Even newer stops that are being built aren't exactly leveled. On the subject of accessibility, there are push buttons on the doors and by designated areas for people with disabilities. They are quite noticeable and not hard to press on. The design differs to that of other trams in the city, including the 15T, and I'd argue they are better suited for everyone. There are also stop buttons on some of the handles across the tram, though they appear less accessible, so it may be harder for some to press if needed. Before we continue talking about the tram, let's get back on board at Malostranska. As I awaited the 52T, a very old relative came by, number 2172, a Ringhofer tram that was built in 1929. But this car in particular is significant because it was part of a procession in 1974 that marked the end of 2-axle trams in Prague. Now, a little more than 50 years later, a new member has joined Prague's tram system, marking a new chapter in DPP's history. Now, let's hop back on board the 52T so we can continue talking about it and make our way to the end of our journey. All trams in Prague have heating, but the majority don't have air conditioning. Only the 15Ts have air conditioning, albeit only 2/3 of the fleet. Thankfully, the 52Ts have air conditioning on board, a major help in the hot summer days. As an American who takes AC for granted, much appreciated, Škoda. While all of that warm and cool air spreads throughout the vehicle, the tram certainly needs room for its passengers. The 52T does feel spacious, even though, according to Škoda, the tram carries less passengers than the 15T. Despite that, they certainly have more space than some of the older trams and still let you breathe during rush hour, giving some level of comfort. Speaking of comfort, how is ride comfort? The tram doesn't feel like it jerks or makes any harsh movements, even when going around corners or stopping. The vehicle feels rather elegant in its movement. Škoda prides itself with the new motor technology in these trams, and I think it's well deserved. With ride comfort still in mind, while we wrap up our journey, there's one last item to discuss: the seats. Oh. I'm not saying these are bad seats per se, but I distinctly remember sitting on one for the first time and recognizing a problem. Let's say a nice thing first. These seats are cushioned where most trams in Prague aren't. There is a particular seat that's on some of the T3s that date way back, and to be frank, they suck. So the cushioning is a much needed improvement. The shape, on the other hand, here's the problem. When I sit down, I notice there's something subtly pushing on my shoulders. At first, it's no biggie. I go about riding the tram and it's fine. But the longer I ride, the more I notice the feeling and I start to squirm a bit. And I have tried a bunch of different seats on the tram, even the epic kink seat, as they call it. It kind of breaks my heart to say something this bad about the tram, but criticism is due where it's needed, and I think this is really the only issue I have. Maybe it's just me, and I hope everyone else actually feels comfy in the seats. If anybody else has ridden this tram and would like to give their thoughts on the seats, please let me know. Maybe I'm gaslighting myself. Overall, this tram is fantastic. It's part of Prague's public transportation evolution, aside from being an expansion to the tram fleet. There are features we have looked at that I hope could be implemented on some of the older trams. If there's one pragmatic feature, or should I say pragmatic, if there is one pragmatic feature that I would want to see on other trams, it would be the line number on the left side of the vehicles. The only other tram model that has this feature is the KT8D5RN2P. Say that fast 3 times. And that's only because they are bi-directional trams. So it would be quite helpful to have these displays on other vehicles. The center stop display, the new push buttons, the air conditioning, among others, are all welcome features.
So that was our trip on the 52T. I hope you enjoyed this trip as much as I enjoyed it myself. If you'd like to ride on the 52T, you're always welcome to come out to Prague and ride it for yourself. It'll probably be around for the next few or several decades, so there's plenty of time to catch up on it. All other information and links will be down in the description below. Next stop,